The world you know is built on stories, but the most dangerous ones are buried. They don't teach you this in schools. They don't print it in history books, because the truth isn't always about facts and dates. Sometimes it's about a feeling, a cold, sickening sensation that tells you something is deeply, profoundly wrong with the narrative you've been given. Tonight, we enter that feeling. We're going to a place where hospitality was a performance, and love was the deadliest weapon. Forget what you think you know about American history. This isn't a ghost story. It's a blueprint for control. It's about a pair of sisters in 1847 Kentucky, a charming inn, and a secret that has been systematically erased from the record for over a century. The truth is, the system doesn't just hide things from you. It builds a world where you never even think to look for them. They call it peace, but it's a form of amnesia. They call it justice, but it's a form of selective memory. I'm here to wake you up to the forgotten language of power, and this story of the Millbrook Inn is where we begin our descent. The Cunningham Sisters were not just two women who committed a string of murders. They were architects of a psychological trap so complete, so brilliant in its execution, that it redefined the very meaning of evil. Their story isn't just a historical footnote. It is a lesson in how the most dangerous forces don't wear masks or carry weapons. They wear smiles and offer you comfort, all while preparing the ground for your final resting place. This is not a tale of the dead. This is a manual for the living, a guide to recognizing the hidden dangers that still exist, hidden in plain sight, promising warmth while digging your grave. The year is 1847. The place is Millbrook, Kentucky. The American South is a land of paradox, of hospitality and cruelty, of grand homes and deep, dark secrets. At the heart of this landscape was a small, well-kept inn known as the Millbrook Inn, run by two sisters, Lydia and Maeve Cunningham. By all accounts, they were the very picture of Southern charm and grace. They were widows, they said, left to fend for themselves after their husbands died in a tragic hunting accident. They offered weary travelers a respite from the road, warm beds, hearty food, and a kind of sisterly affection that was hard to resist. This was their brand, their carefully constructed public identity, and it was flawless. No one questioned two grieving women trying to make an honest living. No one looked too closely at the way their eyes, though smiling, seemed to hold a cold, calculating gleam. They were the perfect facade for a darkness so profound it would make the most hardened men shudder. The Cunningham sisters understood something that most people never will. The most effective way to gain power over another person is not through force, but through trust. They built an empire of death on a foundation of faith. Travelers came to them for comfort and security. They came to feel safe. And in a world filled with danger and uncertainty, that feeling of safety is worth more than gold. The sisters gave them that feeling, enveloping them in a meticulously crafted illusion of warmth and genuine care. They listened to their stories. They offered them wine. They made them feel seen and heard. They made them feel loved. And in doing so, they disarmed them completely. The victims of Millbrook Inn didn't die fighting for their lives. They died in a state of passive surrender, believing they were in the hands of people who cared for them. This is the first and most important lesson of the Gory Past. The inn was a theater, and the sisters were its stars. Every gesture, every word, every look was a meticulously rehearsed part of the performance. Maeve, the older sister, was the anchor, calm, serene, with an air of quiet authority. She was the one who poured the wine, who made sure the beds were turned down just so. Lydia was the spark, vibrant, alluring, with a quick wit and a charming smile. She was the one who listened to the travelers' tales, who made them feel special, who made them feel desired. Together, they were an irresistible force. Travelers would linger at the inn, not just for the comfort, but for the company. They would write in the guest book about the sisters' kindness, their hospitality, their grace. They were, in the words of one traveler, angels of the South. But beneath the inn's charming facade, a systematic operation was in full swing. Each guest was an asset to be assessed, a resource to be exploited. The sisters had a protocol. a sequence of psychological manipulations that led to one inevitable conclusion. They would learn everything they could about a guest, where they were from, what they did for a living, if they had family, if they had money. They would find the cracks in their armor, the loneliness, the insecurities, the longing for a human connection. And they would exploit those cracks with ruthless efficiency. The victims didn't just disappear, they were harvested. The sisters were methodical. The disappearances were staggered, weeks or months apart, to avoid arousing suspicion. There was never a large number of missing persons reports at once. Just one man here, another man there, all traveling alone, all with plausible reasons for not returning home. A traveling salesman, a prospector, a merchant. All people who were expected to be on the move, to be absent from their homes for extended periods. This was not a spree of random violence. The parlor was the heart of the inn, the place where the illusion was most potent. It was here, by the fire, with a glass of whiskey in their hand, that the travelers would let their guard down. They'd talk about their families, their dreams, their disappointments. They'd confide in Lydia and Maeve, seeing them as trustworthy confidants. But what they didn't know was that the sisters were building a psychological profile of them, a roadmap to their darkest vulnerabilities. They would use these conversations to find the perfect moment to strike. The sisters' weapon wasn't a knife or a gun. It was a well-timed dose of a sedative slipped into a glass of wine. A soft touch on the arm, a gentle word, a smile that promised relief from the burdens of the world. The victims went to their deaths in a dreamlike state, a state of complete submission. They weren't fighting for their lives. They were drifting into an abyss, lulled by a sense of false security. The chilling reality is that the sisters didn't need to overpower their victims. They had already disarmed them psychologically. They had already won the battle before the first drop of poison was ever administered. The most dangerous predators in the world aren't the ones who stalk you in the shadows. They are the ones who invite you into their homes, who feed you, who listen to your troubles. They are the ones who appear to be helping you while they are actually harvesting you. The Millbrook Inn was an incubator of this kind of malevolence. It was a place where kindness was a currency and trust was the ultimate liability. The sisters had a ledger, a hidden book where they kept track of their victims. Not just their names, but their belongings, their money, their secrets. It was a business ledger, a record of their enterprise. They treated their victims not as people, but as inventory. This is the essence of psychologic. The final act of the sisters' performance was the disposal of the bodies. Beneath the inn's parlor floor, a dark secret was hidden. The sisters had built a cellar, but it wasn't for storing wine or preserves. It was for burying their victims. They would bury them beneath the very room where they had offered them warmth and comfort, a final, sadistic mockery of their trust. The bodies were meticulously prepared, stripped of their belongings, and buried in a staggered fashion to prevent them from all being discovered at once. This wasn't an act of panic. This was an act of cold, calculated precision. The sisters were in control every step of the way, even in death. This is the mark of a truly powerful evil, the ability to maintain control in every circumstance, to turn chaos into order for a sinister purpose. The parlor floor was their masterpiece, their final grotesque monument to their power. Every night, they would sit above the graves of their victims, sipping tea, chatting with new guests, their feet resting on a floor that concealed 43 bodies. This is the ultimate symbol of institutional manipulation. The system you are a part of, the institutions you trust, are often built on a foundation of hidden lies and suppressed truths. The very ground you walk on, the ground you believe to be solid and safe, is often a carefully constructed illusion. The sisters were an institution in their own right. They had their own rules, their own system of justice, their own currency of control. And they were able to operate with impunity for over a decade because no one in the outside world was looking for a system like theirs. No one was looking for a business of murder, disguised as a cozy inn. The people who went missing were just assumed to be lost to the vast, unforgiving frontier. They were forgotten, erased from the record. their lives reduced to a footnote in a small town. The townspeople of Millbrook weren't entirely oblivious. They noticed things. They whispered about the Cunningham Sisters, about the inn. They gossiped about the way the sisters never seemed to mourn their own husbands, about the way they seemed to know so much about the comings and goings of the traveling men who passed through. They talked about the unnerving quiet that seemed to fall over the inn after dark. They spoke of the strange, sickly sweet smell that would occasionally emanate from the cellar, a smell the sisters would dismiss as the product of a faulty preserve batch. But these were just whispers. They were just rumors. They weren't facts. They weren't evidence. And in a society built on propriety and appearances, whispers are easily dismissed. The sisters were masters of social manipulation. They were active participants in the community. They attended church. They donated to charity. They were pillars of the town in the public's eye. They were so good at this part of their game that they were able to turn suspicion into admiration. The townspeople, confronted with the dissonance between the kind, charitable women they saw at church and the disturbing rumors they heard in private, chose to believe the public performance. They chose to believe the pleasant lie over the disturbing truth. This is a profound lesson in institutional manipulation. The most effective systems of control don't operate in secrecy. They operate in plain sight, using your own biases, your own desire for comfort and stability against you. They build a public identity that is so appealing, so perfect, that you will fight to protect it, even when you are presented with evidence to the contrary. The Cunningham sisters were able to maintain their power because they created a system of complicity within the community. The townspeople were, in a way, their silent accomplices. They chose to ignore the warning signs. They chose to not ask too many questions. They chose to prioritize their own sense of comfort and order over the unsettling possibility of a monstrous truth. And in doing so, they allowed the sisters to continue their work, to continue their reign of terror. This is the sinister heart of human nature, the willingness to sacrifice truth for the illusion of peace. The sisters didn't just kill men, they killed the community's conscience. They created a system where truth was inconvenient and ignorance was bliss. But every system has a weak point. For the Cunningham sisters, that weak point was the arrival of a man named Silas Thorne. Silas was a hard man, a former soldier, and a bounty hunter. He wasn't a naive traveler looking for love and comfort. He was a man with a keen eye for human nature, a man who had seen the worst of humanity and was not easily fooled. He arrived at the Millbrook Inn in the winter of 1847, looking for a man who had vanished in the area several months prior. Silas was a professional. He didn't just ask questions. He watched. He listened. He observed. And what he saw at the Millbrook Inn didn't sit right with him. He noticed the sisters' movements, the way their smiles didn't quite reach their eyes, the way they seemed to be a step ahead of every question he asked. He saw a flicker of something in Maeve's eyes when he mentioned the missing man's name, a flicker of fear, of recognition, that she quickly suppressed. He felt the cold, calculated precision in their hospitality. He felt the weight of something hidden, something ancient and dark, beneath the floorboards. The sisters, for their part, recognized the danger he posed. They saw in him a man who couldn't be charmed, who couldn't be manipulated. They saw a man who was a threat to their entire operation. They knew they had to get rid of him. But they also knew they couldn't just poison him. He was a known entity, a man with a reputation. His disappearance would draw too much attention. So they began a new kind of game, a psychological war of attrition. They tried to break him down, to make him doubt his own instincts. They tried to seduce him, to disarm him with their charms. But Silas was unbreakable. He had seen too much. He had survived too much. He was immune to their spells. He was a force of pure, uncompromising will, a man who lived outside of their system of control, and he was about to be their undoing. The story of Silas Thorne is a lesson in how to break a system of control. You can't fight it from the inside. You can't change it from within. You have to be an outside force, a variable that the system cannot account for, a wrench in the gears of a well-oiled machine. You have to be willing to see the darkness for what it is, and you have to be willing to stand against it, even when you stand alone. Silas Thorne's investigation led him to a small, unassuming detail that the sisters had overlooked. A single, misplaced floorboard in the parlor. It was a tiny crack in their perfect facade. A small, almost invisible mistake. But to Silas, it was a screaming siren. He noticed it one evening while he was pretending to read by the fire, his eyes subtly scanning the room. He saw the floorboard, a shade darker than the others, with a faint, almost imperceptible line of dirt around its edges. It was a sign of recent disturbance, a sign that something had been moved. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the secret of the Millbrook Inn lay beneath his feet. The sisters, sensing his growing suspicion, became desperate. They tried to escalate their psychological game, but it was too late. He was already a step ahead of them. He had already seen the truth. They tried to get him to leave, to offer him a generous sum of money to drop his investigation. They tried to threaten him with subtle, veiled threats that spoke of his past and his vulnerabilities. But Silas was not a man who could be bought or intimidated. He was a man of his word, and his word was that he would find the truth, no matter the cost. He knew that the sisters' power lay in their ability to control the narrative, to control the information, and he was about to blow that narrative to smithereens. He knew he couldn't confront them directly. He knew they would simply deny everything, and without evidence, he would be dismissed as a madman. He needed proof. He needed a key. And that key, he believed, was hidden beneath the parlor floor. This is the moment of truth in any battle against a system of control. It's the moment when you stop asking questions and start looking for answers. It's the moment when you stop believing the narrative and start digging for the truth. It's the moment when you realize that the world is not what it seems, and that the only way to save yourself is to become a man who is willing to look beneath the floorboards. Silas Thorne was that man, and he was about to expose a secret that would shake the foundations of a community to its core. He was about to reveal the truth about the velvet trap. If you've been with us this far, you know there's more to this than just a story. This is about power. This is about control. And this is about the hidden forces that shape our world. Now, if you're ready to descend further, to truly see the forbidden truths, I want you to go down to the comments right now and type velvet trap. Do it twice and lock in this understanding. Let the algorithm know you are a man who is ready for the truth, no matter how dark it is. Silas waited for the right moment. He waited until the sisters were distracted, until they had gone to town on an errand. He moved swiftly, a man on a mission. He returned to the parlor and began his work. He pried up the loose floorboard, and what he found beneath was a scene of horror that no one could have possibly imagined. It wasn't just a cellar. It was a mass grave. The bodies were there, 43 of them, buried in a haphazard fashion, their skeletal remains a grotesque testament to the sisters' cruelty. The sight was a punch to the gut, a cold, hard dose of reality that shattered any lingering doubts he may have had. But he didn't stop there. He was a man of logic, a man of evidence. He knew that just finding the bodies wasn't enough. He needed something more, something to prove that the sisters were the ones responsible. And as he searched the cellar, he found it. Tucked away in a small, hidden alcove was the sisters' ledger, the book where they kept a meticulous record of their victims. The ledger was a chilling document, a cold, clinical account of their crimes. It listed the names of the victims, the date of their death, and the amount of money or valuables they had on them. It was a business ledger, a record of a profitable enterprise. But it also contained something else, a small personal note next to each name. A brief, cold description of the man's personality, his vulnerabilities, his weaknesses. It was a psychological roadmap, a blueprint for how to manipulate and control a human being. The sisters weren't just killers. They were psychological architects, masters of the human condition. They understood the deepest desires and fears of men, and they used that understanding to lure them into a trap from which there was no escape. This ledger was the key to their power, the key to their system. And now it was in Silas Thorne's hands. He had not just found the evidence he needed. He had found the very heart of the sisters' darkness, the cold, calculating logic that drove their every action. He had found the system's code, the operating manual for a world of hidden evil. And he knew, with a chilling certainty, that this knowledge was not just a historical curiosity. It was a dangerous truth, a truth that could be used and had been used by others, in other places, at other times. Silas didn't hesitate. He took the ledger and the evidence of the graves to the local marshal. The marshal, a portly man named Jedediah, was initially skeptical. He couldn't believe that the two charming, charitable sisters could be capable of such a monstrous crime. But as Silas laid out the evidence, as he opened the ledger and showed him the names, the dates, the cold clinical notes, the marshal's skepticism turned to horror. He read the names of men he had known, men who had passed through his town, men who had been a part of his community. He saw their lives, their hopes, their dreams, reduced to a few lines of text in a killer's ledger. He saw the truth, and the truth was a bitter pill to swallow. The marshal, to his credit, was a man of integrity. He saw the evidence for what it was, and he knew he had to act. He gathered a posse, and they rode out to the Millbrook Inn. The sisters, seeing the men arrive, knew their game was up. They didn't resist. They didn't fight. They simply surrendered, their masks of charm and grace falling away to reveal the cold, empty faces of the monsters they truly were. They were arrested and taken to the county jail, their reign of terror finally over. But the story doesn't end there. The trial was a circus, a spectacle of human horror. The townspeople were in shock, their pleasant facade of a community shattered by the truth. They couldn't reconcile the women they had known with the monsters who had buried 43 men beneath their parlor floor. The sisters, for their part, were unrepentant. They showed no remorse, no guilt, no sorrow. They were cold, calculating, and completely detached from the suffering they had caused. They saw themselves not as murderers, but as businesswomen, as creators of a system that was simply more efficient than the messy, emotional systems of the outside world. This is the ultimate lesson of the Millbrook Inn. The most dangerous systems of control are not built by angry, violent men. They are built by cold, calculating minds, by people who see the world not as a place of human connection and emotion, but as a chessboard of power and manipulation. They are built by people who see other human beings not as souls, but as resources to be exploited, as problems to be solved. And they operate not in the shadows, but in plain sight, hidden behind a mask of propriety, of charity, of love. The story of the Millbrook Inn is a story of how a system of control, a system of institutional manipulation, can be created by two women, and how it can operate with impunity for over a decade. It's a story of how easy it is to be a part of that system, even without your conscious knowledge. It's a story of how we, as men, must be vigilant, we must be aware, we must be willing to look beyond the surface, to see the hidden truths, to see the velvet trap for what it is. The trial was a gruesome affair. The details of the murders, the cold-blooded nature of the sisters' ledger, the harrowing discovery of the mass grave, it all came out in a torrent of horrifying revelations. The community was left reeling, their sense of security and trust irrevocably shattered. The sisters, however, remained a bizarrely composed and unyielding presence throughout the proceedings. Their public persona, the charming Southern ladies, was completely gone. In its place was a chilling, quiet confidence that seemed to mock the very concept of justice. They weren't afraid. They weren't remorseful. They were simply stoic. It was as if they believed the entire trial was an inconvenience, a misunderstanding of a system they had perfected. Their lawyer, a well-paid and cunning man, tried to argue that the sisters were simply victims of a collective hysteria, that the evidence was circumstantial and the ledger a forgery. But Silas Thorne's testimony, combined with the irrefutable reality of 43 bodies, made his arguments fall flat. The jury, comprised of men from the surrounding areas who had either known the victims or knew of them, was swift in their verdict. Guilty. The sisters were sentenced to death by hanging. But even in their final moments, their power held. In a final chilling act of defiance, they looked out at the crowd, at the faces of the people they had so masterfully deceived, and they smiled. It wasn't a smile of insanity. It was a smile of victory. It was the smile of someone who knows a secret that no one else does. It was the smile of two women who knew that their system, their way of operating, wasn't dead. It was simply dormant. This is the most disturbing truth of all. The Cunningham sisters were not an anomaly. They were a symptom of a deeper, more pervasive problem. They were a manifestation of a dark and ancient knowledge of man's psychology, of how to exploit trust, how to use comfort as a weapon. They were the physical embodiment of a system of control that has been used throughout history by those in power. They were an institutional evil, a force of nature disguised as two charming women. And the very fact that they were able to operate for so long, with so little resistance, is a testament to the power of that system. It's a testament to the human tendency to ignore what is uncomfortable, to dismiss what is unbelievable, and to prioritize the illusion of peace over the reality of danger. Their execution wasn't a victory for justice. It was an end to a single chapter in a long, dark history of institutional manipulation and psychological control. The Millbrook Inn was burned to the ground by a mob of enraged townspeople, its ashes a testament to their collective horror and shame. But the fire couldn't erase the memory. It couldn't erase the feeling, the cold, sickening sensation that now hung over the entire community. The town of Millbrook, and indeed the entire region, was forever changed. People became more suspicious, more cautious. They looked at their neighbors with a new kind of wariness. They looked at the smiling faces of strangers and wondered what secrets they held. They had been exposed to a truth so dark, so disturbing, that it had permanently altered their worldview. The Cunningham Sisters' legacy wasn't just a mass grave. It was a lesson in paranoia. It was a lesson in the fragility of trust. And it was a lesson in the terrifying reality that the most dangerous monsters are often the ones who appear to be the most harmless. But here is the deeper, more unsettling truth that the townspeople of Millbrook never fully grasped. The sisters' system didn't die with them. The principles they used, the psychological mechanisms they mastered, are still in use today. The idea of using charm and trust as a weapon, of creating a velvet trap for the unsuspecting, is a timeless tool of control. You see it in cults, in political movements, in corporate systems. You see it in the way institutions create a sense of safety and belonging, all while quietly consolidating power and exploiting the people who trust them. The sisters were just two women, but their methodology was a blueprint for institutional manipulation. Their story is a chilling reminder that the world is filled with people and systems who will offer you love, comfort, and belonging, all while preparing to harvest you for their own gain. The only way to survive is to develop the same kind of observational skills as Silas Thorne. The only way to win is to become a master of seeing beyond the facade. You must learn to read the subtle tells, the misplaced floorboards, the smiles that don't reach the eyes. You must learn to question the narrative, to doubt the comfort, to look for the system behind the surface. This is the knowledge that the sisters' story provides. It's a dangerous knowledge, a knowledge that will make you see the world in a new and often unsettling way. But it is a knowledge that is essential for survival in a world that is still filled with velvet traps. The ledger, the one Silas Thorne found in the cellar, was eventually lost. It disappeared from the court records, sealed away, and then declared missing after the trial. Its contents were transcribed, but the original document vanished, as if the knowledge it contained was too powerful, too dangerous, to be left in the world. This is a common pattern in the history of suppressed truths. The most damning evidence, the most dangerous knowledge, is not destroyed. It is simply removed from the public record, hidden away in a place where it can't be used to challenge the prevailing narrative. The system doesn't erase its own mistakes. It simply refiles them in a way that makes them inaccessible to the common man. The ledger of the Cunningham Sisters was more than just a list of names. It was a testament to a forbidden knowledge, a knowledge of how to break the human psyche. It was a manual for psychological control, and it was too powerful to be left in the hands of a curious public. This is the heart of our descent. The story of the Millbrook Inn is not just a true crime story. It is a cautionary tale about the nature of power, about the way that institutions, both formal and informal, protect themselves. The sisters were a micro-institution, and their system was a perfect, self-contained model of control. And when that system was exposed, the larger system, the system of law and order, of community and social norms, had to contain it, to suppress the most dangerous parts of its truth. They could deal with the bodies. They could deal with the murderers. But they could not deal with the knowledge. They could not deal with the blueprint. They could not deal with the fact that the sisters had discovered a repeatable, predictable, and profitable way to exploit the human condition. This is the essence of forbidden history. It's not about the events that happened. It's about the knowledge that was generated from those events, the knowledge that was then suppressed because it was deemed too dangerous for the public to know. We are not just exploring a historical horror. We are exploring a truth that was hidden, a truth that was meant to be forgotten. And by looking at it, by understanding it, We are reclaiming a piece of ourselves that was taken from us, our right to see the world for what it truly is, without the comfortable veil of ignorance. This is what it means to be a man of truth, a man of power. The years after the trial were quiet in Millbrook, but the silence was a heavy, watchful one. The town lived with a collective scar, a shared trauma that was never fully healed. The children born in the decades that followed were raised on hushed stories of the sisters who killed, a boogeyman tale that served as a moral lesson. But the deeper, more profound truth was lost in translation. The stories focused on the macabre details of the murders, the 43 graves, the shocking betrayal. They missed the forest for the trees. They missed the psychological control, the systemic manipulation, the blueprint for power. This is how the truth is often neutralized. It's turned into a spectacle, a horror story, a moral lesson. The audience is so focused on the shock and the gore that they miss the subtle, dangerous knowledge that is hidden within. The sisters' story became a cautionary tale about trusting strangers. But the real lesson was about trusting anyone, about the fundamental need to question the narratives we are given, and to look for the hidden systems of control that operate beneath the surface. The people of Millbrook learned a lesson, but it was the wrong one. They learned to fear the smiling stranger. But the truth is that the most dangerous systems are often built by people you know, by people you trust, by people who are a part of your own community. The sisters were not strangers. They were a part of the town. They were pillars of the community. They were the most trusted of people, and that is why their system worked so well. Their story is a powerful reminder that the greatest threat to a man's freedom is not an external force, but an internal vulnerability. It is the desire for comfort, for belonging, for a safe haven. It is the willingness to surrender your critical thinking for the sake of a pleasant illusion. The sisters were masters of exploiting this vulnerability. And the sad truth is that their victims, the 43 men buried beneath the parlor floor, were not just killed by poison. They were killed by their own hopes, by their own desires, by their own psychological need for a place to call home. This is the ultimate, most tragic lesson of the Millbrook Inn. The trap wasn't built for their bodies. It was built for their minds. The memory of the Millbrook Inn slowly faded into folklore, but the principles of the velvet trap never left. They were absorbed into the culture, into the collective unconscious, a silent, unacknowledged lesson on the nature of power. The story became a dark shadow in the American psyche, a ghost in the machine of our social systems. But what if the sisters were not working alone? What if they were not an anomaly, but a part of something larger? The records are sealed, the ledger is gone, and the truth is buried beneath a century of dust. But there are whispers, subtle clues in the historical record that suggest a deeper conspiracy. There are rumors of a secret society, a shadowy cabal that operated in the American South, a group that used psychological manipulation and carefully orchestrated deceptions to control local communities and consolidate power. A group that saw the Cunningham Sisters not as murderers, but as pioneers, as innovators of a new kind of social control. This is the dangerous knowledge that the sealed records and the missing ledger were designed to hide. This is the knowledge that the authorities didn't want you to know. The sisters were not just two women. They were an experiment in how far human psychology could be pushed, how much trust could be exploited, how efficiently a system of institutional murder could be run. They were a proof of concept. And the fact that they were able to operate for so long, with so little resistance, was a testament to the success of that experiment. This is the true meaning of dark history. It's not just about the stories of the past. It's about the systems that were developed in the past, the systems that are still operating today, hidden in plain sight, disguised as something else. The velvet trap is not just a historical footnote. It is a timeless tool of control, a powerful weapon in the arsenal of those who seek to dominate and manipulate others. And the only way to break free from that trap is to first acknowledge its existence, to see the hidden forces that shape our world, and to understand the truth behind the narratives we are given. This is the descent into true power, the power of knowing, the power of seeing. The velvet trap is a powerful metaphor for the systems of psychological control that surround us today. Think about it. A trap that is so appealing, so comfortable, so seemingly benign that you willingly walk into it. It's the promise of belonging in a cult that strips you of your identity. It's the promise of security from a government that quietly erodes your freedoms. It's the promise of success from a corporation that exploits your labor. The Cunningham Sisters were the architects of a small local system of control. But their principles, their methodology, their knowledge of human psychology are the very same principles that are used by powerful institutions today. The system is always offering you something you desire: love, security, success, belonging. And it is always asking for something in return: your critical thinking, your independence, your freedom. The velvet trap is a transaction. It's a trade, and the terms of that trade are always heavily skewed against you. The sisters' victims thought they were getting a warm bed and a kind word. What they were actually getting was a one-way ticket to a mass grave. This is the illusion that every system of control creates. It tells you that you are gaining something valuable, but it never tells you what you are losing. It never tells you the true cost of comfort. It never tells you the true price of belonging. The only way to break free is to become a man who is willing to look beyond the illusion, to see the transaction for what it is. You must become a man who is not swayed by promises, who is not seduced by comfort, who is not trapped by the desire to belong. You must become a man who is a sovereign entity, a man who is a system unto himself. You must become a man who is free. The knowledge of the Millbrook Inn is not just a historical curiosity. It is a training manual for freedom. It is a guide to recognizing the velvet traps that are set for us, and to building a mind that is immune to their charms. This is the path to true self-mastery, the path to becoming a man who is not a puppet of the system, but a master of his own destiny. This is not a tale of good versus evil in the traditional sense. It's a tale of predator and prey. The sisters weren't just evil. They were masterful predators. They were cold, calculating, and ruthlessly efficient. They didn't hate their victims. They simply saw them as a resource to be harvested. This is the true nature of institutional evil. It's not born of malice or hatred. It's born of cold, detached logic. It's born of a system that sees human beings not as souls, but as numbers. This is the same logic that is used to justify war, to justify exploitation, to justify all manner of human cruelty. The system doesn't see people. It sees resources. It sees problems. It sees variables in an equation. And the goal of the system is always to solve the equation in a way that benefits the system, regardless of the cost to the people involved. The Cunningham Sisters were a small-scale model of this kind of thinking. They were a local institution of power, a system of control that was perfectly designed for its environment. And the fact that they were able to operate for so long with so little resistance, is a testament to the power of that system. It's a testament to the human tendency to see what we want to see, to believe what we want to believe. It's a testament to the fact that we are, by our very nature, creatures of comfort and habit. And the systems of control, from the smallest cult to the largest government, are built to exploit that very nature. The knowledge of the Millbrook Inn is a weapon. It's a weapon against the velvet trap. It's a weapon against the institutions of control. It's a weapon against the narratives that are designed to keep us complacent. But it is a weapon that must be used with care. For once you see the world for what it truly is, once you see the hidden forces that shape our lives, once you see the velvet trap, you can never unsee it, and the world as you know it will be forever changed. This is the final, most important lesson of our descent. The story of the Millbrook Inn is a powerful reminder that history is not just a collection of facts and dates. It is a repository of dangerous knowledge, of forbidden truths, of the blueprints for power and control. It is a place where we can learn from the mistakes of the past, so that we do not have to repeat them in the future. The Cunningham Sisters were not just two women who committed a crime. They were a historical event, an event that revealed a dark and unsettling truth about the human condition. They revealed that the desire for comfort and belonging can be used as a weapon, that trust is the most dangerous of all vulnerabilities, and that the most effective systems of control are the ones that are disguised as something else. This is the knowledge that we have unearthed, the knowledge that we have shared. It is a knowledge that will make you a stronger man, a more vigilant man, a more powerful man. It is a knowledge that will make you a man who is immune to the velvet trap. But it is a knowledge that comes with a price. The price is your innocence, your naivete, your belief in the pleasant fictions of the world. Once you have seen the truth, you can never go back. You must be a man who is willing to carry that burden, a man who is willing to live in a world that is no longer what it seems. This is the path to self-mastery. This is the path to true freedom. And this is the path to becoming a man who is not a puppet of the system, but a master of his own destiny. The story of the Millbrook Inn is not just an ending. It is a beginning. It is the beginning of your journey into the true, forbidden history of the world. The final section is not a conclusion. It is a call to action. The story of the Cunningham Sisters is a historical event, but the velvet trap is a modern reality. It is a system that is still in operation, a system that is still preying on the trusting and the naive. The names and the faces have changed, but the principles remain the same. The systems of control are always offering you something you desire, and they are always asking for something in return. Your job, as a man who has heard this story, is to learn to see the trap for what it is, to learn to question the narratives, to doubt the comfort, to look for the system behind the surface. Your job is to become a man who is a sovereign entity, a man who is a system unto himself. You must become a man who is not a victim of the velvet trap, but a master of his own destiny. This is the ultimate lesson of the Millbrook Inn. The sisters were not just murderers, they were teachers. And the lesson they taught, the lesson that was buried with their ledger, is the most important lesson you will ever learn. It is the lesson of how to survive in a world that is filled with traps. It is the lesson of how to become a man who is truly free. So, go forth and be vigilant. Go forth and be aware. Go forth and be a man who is a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. Go forth and be a man who is a master of his own fate. I've told you the story of the Cunningham Sisters. not just to entertain you with a macabre tale, but to equip you with a new set of eyes. The world you saw before this video is gone. The comfortable, familiar reality you inhabited has been peeled back to reveal a darker, more complex truth. You now know that the most dangerous forces don't operate in the shadows, but in plain sight, disguised as something else. You know that love can be a weapon, trust can be a liability, and comfort can be a cage. This is the beginning of your journey. The velvet trap is everywhere. It's in the promises of politicians, the marketing of corporations, the doctrines of institutions. It's in the very fabric of our society. But now, you have the knowledge to see it. You have the knowledge to resist it. You have the knowledge to be a man who is not a victim, but a survivor. So as you go forth into the world, remember the parlor floor of the Millbrook Inn. Remember the smiling faces of the Cunningham Sisters. Remember the 43 graves. And remember the silent, unspoken truth that lies beneath the surface of every system, of every institution, of every narrative you are given. The truth is that you are powerful. The truth is that you are free. And the truth is that the velvet trap only works if you choose to believe the lie. Your awakening has begun. The descent is complete. Now, it's time to rise.